Hey everyone, welcome to Super Soul. I have been following Oprah's Super Soul Sundays, and I've been watching it every week. I don't know when it comes on, but I'm always recording it. And I'm reading Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson, and a story of justice and redemption. I wanted to read in chapter. There's so many poignant stories in this book. So I want to read to you a story of another little boy whose name is Ian Manuel. In 1990, Ian Manuel, the two older boys, attempted to rob a couple who were out for dinner in Tampa, Florida. Ian was 13 years old when Debbie resisted. Ian shot her with a handgun given to him by the older boys. The bullet went through her cheek, shattering several teeth and severely damaging her jaw. All three boys were arrested and charged with armed robbery and attempted homicide. Ian's appointed lawyer encouraged him to plead guilty, assuring him that he would be sentenced to 15 years in prison. The lawyer didn't realize that the two of the charges against Ian were punishable with sentences of life imprisonment without parole. The judge accepted Ian's plea and then sentenced him to life with no parole. Even though he was 13, the judge condemned Ian for living in the streets, for not having good parental supervision, and for his multiple prior arrests for shoplifting and minor property crimes. Ian was sent to an adult prison, the Apalachee Correctional Institution, one of the toughest prisons in Florida. The correctional staff in the prison processing center couldn't find any uniforms that would fit a boy Ian's size, so they cut 6 inches from the bottom of their smallest pants. Juveniles housed in adult prisons are 5 times more likely to be the victims of sexual assault. So the staff of Apalachee put Ian, who was small for his age, in solitary confinement. Solitary confinement at Apalachee means living in a concrete box the size of a walk-in closet. You get your meals through a slot. You do not see other inmates, and you never touch or get another human being. If you act out by saying something insubordinate or refusing to comply with an order given to you by a correctional officer, you are forced to sleep on the concrete floor of your cell without a mattress. If you shout or scream, your time in solitary is extended. If you hurt yourself by refusing to eat or mutilating your body, your time in solitary is extended. If you complain to officers or say anything menacing or inappropriate, your time in solitary is extended. You get 3 showers a week and are allowed 45 minutes in a small caged area for exercise a few times a week. Otherwise, you're alone, hidden away in your concrete box week after week, month after month. In solitary, Ian became a self-described cutter. He would take anything sharp on his food tray to cut his wrists and arms just to watch himself bleed. His mental health unraveled and he attempted suicide several times. Each time he hurt himself or acted out, his time in isolation was extended. Ian spent 18 years in uninterrupted solitary confinement. Once a month, Ian was allowed to make a phone call. Soon after he arrived in prison on Christmas Eve, 1992, he used his call to reach out to Debbie, the woman he had shot. She answered the phone. Ian spilled out an emotional apology, expressing his deep regret and remorse. Miss Barrage, what was her first name? Because I can't pronounce her last name. So the first name was What was her name? Let's call her Debbie. Debbie. When Miss Debbie was stunned to hear from the boy who had shot her, but she was moved by his call. She had physically recovered from the shooting and was working to become a successful bodybuilder and started a magazine focused on women's health. She was a determined woman who didn't let the shooting derail her from her goals. The first surprising phone call led to a regular correspondence. Ian had been neglected by his family before the crime took place. He'd been left to wander the streets with little parental or family support. In solitary, he met few prisoners or correctional staff. As he sank deeper into despair, Debbie became one of the few people in Ian's life who encouraged him to remain strong. After communicating with Ian for several years, Miss Debbie wrote the court and the judge who sentenced Ian of her conviction that his sentence was too harsh, that his conditions of confinement were inhumane. She tried to talk to the prison officials and gave interviews to the press to draw attention to Ian's plight. No one knows more than I do how destructive and reckless Ian's crime was, but what we're currently doing to him is mean and irresponsible. This is what she's saying. This is what she said in her letter to the judge. She told one reporter, she told this to a reporter. When the crime was committed, he was a child, a 13-year-old boy with a lot of problems, no supervision and no help available. We are not children. The courts ignored Debbie's call for a reduced sentence. By 2010, Florida had sentenced more than 100 children to life imprisonment without parole for non-homicide offense. Several of whom were 13-year-olds, several of whom were 13-year-olds at the time of the crime. All of the youngest condemned children, 13 or 14 years of age, were Black or Latino. Florida had the largest population in the world of children condemned to die in prison for non-homicides. All right then. So we see that there's a lot of children who are dying in prison. And this is going on now as we speak in 2014. These children are still dying in prison, and they're still sentencing children to prison for non-homicides.